Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 393 and 394. The target is Camie, the looming clutches of a professional kidnapper. And Rescue Camie, the archipelago's lingering dark history. In these episodes, we have got a rescue mission underway, kids, because everybody just left Camie all by herself. And it turns out that Thriller Bark is not the only place that has a highly suspect giant stuffed bear. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. What's up, everybody? Florian is in the chat, but only able to partially listen because he is at work. But yeah, I'm really excited, you guys, because this section is proving to be a lot more interesting. I don't want to get my hopes up too far, but I'm pretty into what's going on, and I also kind of got a little bit of what I was hoping for. In the last episode, I mentioned how much I enjoyed the experience of getting to see them just be tourists and wander around and learn about what the area is like and do touristy things. And I got a little bit more of it before everything went left. And that actually was kind of satisfying. Like, you know, I kind of, if I were asked, I think I probably would have said I'd need more than I got to be appeased, but I think it was just the right amount. I was feeling pretty like, okay, I get it, and I enjoy this area the more I get to know about it, even though it's got this horrible history underneath it. That's part of what I kind of enjoy. And the whole thing with this too, guys, I already have mentioned that I covered Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island, which I think posted today for patrons, and it'll post tomorrow or the day after for non-patrons. But this is also kind of like, it's not obviously the same situation, but it's a really similar vibe where you have this alleged tourist destination that's a really like overtly beautiful and friendly and all of this. And then the more you get to know it, you start to be like, oh no. And everything starts to seem a little bit more fucked up. But obviously with Baron Omatsuri, it was like, spoilers, pretty much one dude ruining everything. And here it's a whole system that's ruining everything. So let's begin, shall we? In The Target is Camie, the looming clutches of a professional kidnapper is such a good line. Clutches is just underused, and you can quote me on that. We start things off with all of our friends like departing from, what is the name of this woman again? She had a name that I remember thinking like it was almost a regular word in English, but it had two K's instead of, I think it was Saki. Is that right? Sakky? The Tarantino character is always how I'm thinking of her. But everybody is walking away, and they have decided, Shocky. Thank you, Seraphim. And Seraphim also said, time for more super happy fun time vacation island where nothing at all dark or messed up is going on just under the surface while everyone tries to pretend it doesn't exist for their own safety and peace of mind. Yeah. And I mean, let's be real. There's a lot of this in a lot of vacation spots. Like, the specter of human trafficking is very real in a lot of places. And I do not just mean abroad. I mean here in the U.S. as well. And I remember reading something about how much trafficking spikes in Texas specifically during the Super Bowl. And I don't remember exactly like or maybe it wasn't like always. It was when Texas hosts the Super Bowl. The spike is crazy because there are so many dudes traveling from different places. And I was just like, ooh, that's so incredibly gross. Cool. We can't just like have sex workers. No, we have to have trafficking victims. But, yeah, this starts off in a very jolly way. They have decided, as anybody could have predicted, to start with the amusement park. I don't think a single soul doubted this was exactly how it was going to go. What Shockey had said was, look for him in the sketchy area, and if you don't find him there, he'll probably be at the park because it's like his favorite place to go. But as soon as she mentioned it, I was like, okay, well, we're definitely doing that first. And I can't even be mad because I feel like it seems the amusement park was like on the way. Maybe I'm interpreting that wrong. Maybe it just seems like it was on the way because that is where we went first. But either way, everybody heads over there and it is adorable because Camie is apparently also, this I thought was really interesting and like it made sense once you find out more of the history here. But Hachi also, both of them have like looked longingly on the amusement park from afar and never thought that they were going to get to actually go. And so the fact that they are here is like the fulfillment of like a childhood dream, which is really so sweet and moving and sad, you know? And this is not something that I think I particularly can relate to. There's nothing that's like so explicitly out of my reach, except for, you know what the one thing is, and it's not at all the same because it's not due to like discrimination or anything like that. But when I booked the tickets for me and Owen to go on our honeymoon, there was a weird kind of like loophole. I did it over the phone, which I normally don't do, but I was having some trouble on the website. So I called and was like, hey, this is what's happening. And they sort of walked me through the issue and they were like, oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that shouldn't be that way. And then they gave me a price on tickets. And I was like, now, does that include luggage? And they said no. And I was like, how much is it with luggage? Like a bag a person or 2 bags a person? And it turned out, because it was a fairly short flight, and by fairly short, I mean like 7 hours, 8 hours. It turned out that first class, which includes all of your luggage, was the same price as booking coach and then paying for 2 bags a person separately. It was like I have looked into this so many times and that has never been even remotely true. And for whatever reason, this 2-leg flight, they had that available. And I remember saying to the guy on the phone, wait, do I have this right? Is it like the same price if I just book first class? And there was this long pause and I could hear him clicking, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, it is. And I was like, is that weird? And he's like, I don't see it often. And I was like, okay, well, guess what? We're going to do that. And I have never flown first class in my life. And I think it's even on one of my Unsober episodes with Rashawn where we talk about our bucket list. And I say, bucket list for me that I don't think I'll ever achieve is flying first class. Because so often first class flights are exponentially more expensive. It's not like coach is $500 and first class is $1,000. It's like coach is $500 and first class is $2,000. And I have always seen it as completely out of reach. And then all of a sudden, by some weird accident, I wound up in first class. And I remember when we finally were in our seats, it was the first flight I had taken because I'm fat. So you can imagine, if you are not also a fat person, but you find it tight on a regular flight, just imagine what it would be like if you were wider and heavier and just took up more room. First class was a revelation. I was suddenly comfortable, like for the first time on a flight. And they were out here offering us champagne that we didn't have to pay for. And everything was just so roomy and lovely. And I got teary-eyed and was like, babe, I just never thought I would be able to be in first class, and I probably never will again. But it's enough for me to have had this one first class experience on our honeymoon. And it was also the flight home, which made it so much better. Everything was wrapping up, and we were getting the most relaxing possible experience for our last leg of the trip. And it was perfect. So that is the closest style I have ever come to what it is that Camie is experiencing here. And what's so upsetting is knowing that any moment this can be taken away from her if people realize what she is. That's the part that I found so sad. And like, eventually that indeed happens. I was sort of wondering if there was going to be an issue with like getting on one of the rides, because, you know, I have the way that things work with mermaids in this universe. They have her being able to like walk around despite the fact that she has a tail and fins. She can squeeze her fins into shoes, which is hilarious. She can't exactly like walk, but she can stand and apparently just sort of like take a step or two by sort of making her jump look like a step. So I sort of thought maybe in getting on one of the rides, that might present a problem. But it turns out that somebody spotted that she had fins instead during that fight, which I didn't notice that moment where her shoe comes off. So anyway, this, what we get when we're in this amusement park is a really great bit that was unexpected, but I loved so much. And the bit is that Brooke keeps not fully understanding what the rides are and is expecting things to be these just like sort of relaxing cruises to give you a better view of the island and stuff, but there's no expectation in him of the thrill part of any of these rides, which, you know, of course, it doesn't really make sense that he wouldn't know how these work, because when you're standing in line, you see people coming on and off of the rides. Like, it does not matter. I don't care. And I just love the first time he's like on the roller coaster going, oh, this is really relaxing and lovely. Look at this amazing view. And then all of a sudden it begins to plummet and everybody else is super excited. But when the ride ends, he's on his hands and knees on the ground outside of the ride. And he looks like he's trying really hard not to throw up. And I loved this ongoing joke so much. I also like what I kept thinking about in terms of the ride that he would actually love. First of all, there's of course the Ferris wheel, which they go on last. And that is one that he really likes because that's a genuinely chill and not fast ride. But also I was thinking about, depending on the amusement park you go to, some of them have like those gondolas that you like climb up this steep sort of staircase and then you can get in, and it's a slow moving hanging tram that goes across the park, and you can like just chill and look down on the rides and everything. And it's not really anything in terms of being like a thrill ride, but it's just something that's often put there to give parents a bit of a break where they can sit down. Sometimes it's like positioned in such a way that you reach one end of the park and you hit that, and if you take it, it'll bring you back to where the parking lot is, kind of thing. Or even if you're going like skiing, there's the ski lift, and that's also sort of a break for people. But I don't think I could do a ski lift, guys. That's so open. I just don't think I could do it. But I was just thinking like, oh, Brooke, maybe you would be into that. So then we have another one that they go on, and it's one of those like drop straight to the ground type rides. And he's like reflecting as they go up how grateful he is that there's no thrill aspect to this. It's just going to be them going straight up and being able to enjoy the view from up top without having to worry about any. And then of course it drops again. There's a teacup ride, and they begin to spin in place so fast that the teacups go shooting off of the ride into the air. And there's a brief moment, I think it's supposed to be that both Brooke and Luffy are throwing up because they're so dizzy. And the poor dude who like runs that ride is like, who's going to pay for all this damage? And I wanted to be like, you know what, sir, as much as I agree that they shouldn't have done it that fast, it is on your head. You shouldn't make it that they can do it that fast. There should be some sort of mechanism in place, because folks are going to be doing this kind of wild shit. That's just how people will push their luck. That's just people. That's just how they work. So that's just sort of on you. And I hope that you've learned your lesson. Yeah, Seraphim says Brooke would spend the whole day at a water park just chilling in the lazy river. 100%. And I actually, having been fatter than the last time I ever went to a water park, which was literally a decade ago, like minimum, I went with Owen to one near us about, at this point, like 6 or 7 years ago. And I really underestimated the change in velocity that happens when you gain weight. So the speed I picked up on some of these slides was downright dangerous. And a few of them, like, there was not a way to mitigate that. And I wound up hurting myself. One of them, like, my top flew off and one of my straps broke on my bathing suit, and we had to like go somewhere and fix it. And it was just a really bad time. And I was starting to be like, I don't know if I can do this. And then we got to the lazy river, and it was the first part of the day where it was like, oh, we can just enjoy ourselves. And there's no like, you know, and I basically spent the next 2 hours in that damn lazy river, and we only stopped because they were closing. We would have definitely stayed. I saw recently, you guys, I'm so sorry this is so off topic. I'm sure people are ready to kill me. But just really quick, I saw the dopest. I follow a couple of like pages that are about Zillow gone wild, or like really wild renovations that people do on homes. And somebody built a lazy river in their backyard, and their home, they added like a sort of room that the lazy river traveled underneath, and the room had a glass floor. So you could sit in there and look down and see the people passing under you on the lazy river, or just see the, like, you know, river itself, just sort of a pretty set piece with all of these plants and everything that had been planted all around it, and to give it a lot of privacy and make it a lot more jungle-like. And honestly, the coolest thing I have ever seen. If I could ever have my druthers, I would love a pool just in general. But getting to have enough room that there's a lazy river, I mean, that is the dream. Can you imagine just being able to go out into your own yard and lazy river it up? Oh, amazing. So anyway, this is the part where everybody starts to be like, oh, sweet, it's time for the millions of ice creams that we saw them selling from way up in the air when we were on the Ferris wheel. And as they are deciding to go and check this out, we flash over to the dudes who had started the fight trying to get Luffy, reporting to some dude about how they think they spotted a mermaid, and they're pretty sure they know what they saw, but that she is with some tough people, so they would have to sort of sidestep them somehow. And the dude they're talking to is named Peterman, And it is so weird, you guys, because what I think we're getting in terms of his like costume is a little bit of a Peter Pan inspiration, a little bit. But he also has what looks like mushrooms growing out of his arms. I couldn't tell if they were like mushrooms or if they were nails or something that was supposed to be like machinery of some kind, you know? And the whole way that they work, like these dudes are basically, you know, they're doing the abducting and enslaving of people. That doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of Peter Pan in any way. So I don't know if there's supposed to be inspiration beyond just his outfit or what. But I also think that the Peterman name just keeps reminding me of the Peterman catalog. Do you guys remember this in Seinfeld when she works for J. Peterman at the Peterman catalog, which I will tell you, I was a fully grown adult by the time I realized that that was a real catalog. I always thought that J. Peterman was meant to be a bit of a spoof of like J. Crew. And then I found out that it was actually its own thing, and I had never seen it in life. I found out about it way later. But that was what I kept thinking of here, and I kind of wished that her boss, who plays J. Peterman, was doing the voice for this character, because that would have been hilarious. And he does do voice work, so it wouldn't have been out of the question. So Seraphim says, I think it's going more for a Robin Hood vibe. You know, when you stop and look at it, Robin Hood and Peter Pan have got a really similar aesthetic. Not entirely, but like pretty close. So yeah, either way, it would make sense. So yeah, this is the dude who dresses up as a giant bear. And it's so, guys, I honestly have to say, it's really sinister. The way that they film this, the shadow falling over her, and how he's just standing there in this outfit. This is a horror movie. You know, the way that he approaches and sees her from afar, but you know that it's him in there, and how trusting she is looking up at him and thinking, oh yeah, this is just one of the mascots from the carnival thing. Like, that's fine. It's adorable, actually. And you are like, no, girl, get out of here. Get out of here. This was truly tense, and I did not like it. So then we jump over to another spot, and I think that this is like one of the sort of bad neighborhood type territories. And we've got this dude in what looks like one of these astronaut uniform things. He is in a chair, if you want to call it that, eating an ice cream. I don't know how, because he's got that helmet on. He's holding it. I don't know. He keeps on, like, it seems as if he's trying to eat it and it's just hitting the helmet. I'm not sure what's going on. I think it's just supposed to emphasize how dumb he is. But he is riding on the back of a human slave. And it doesn't even look like he's a larger slave than average. He just looks like a regular dude. And apparently he is the prince, and he is mad because his sister and his dad sort of left him behind. And later on, when we catch up with his dad and his sister, his sister is like, where the fuck is he? Where did he go? Also, the way that he's animated. So, you know, he's got a booger that's like, I hesitate to even call it a booger, because it's not, it's more like just a drip hanging out of his nose. And normally, you guys, this sort of nose drip thing, I truly detest. And I certainly don't like it. Don't get it twisted. However, the overall design of this character, it is so perfect. He's got this like overall sort of slovenly appearance. His hair is a little bit too long. His face is like sort of 8 o'clock shadow, and he has such a lazy energy to him that I would be willing to bet he climbs into a tub and lets other people scrub him off, and otherwise he does not take care of his personal hygiene at all. And so the what do you call it? The drip, I'm just going to keep calling it that, I guess. There's something about this that is giving, like, I could take some medicine and this would be dealt with, but I can't be bothered. You know, like I could just get some allergy meds and it would be done. I could just get a fucking tissue and blow my nose, but I'm not going to do that. It's too much trouble. And it just works in terms of his overall, like, image. Because the other time that I have come across this, and I'm sure there's been a character that has had this in the show, but the other character that I run into this with is on Animal Crossing. There's this little pig character who sells turnips. Rosie, I think is her name. And she has one of these drips. And I'm always just like, oh, I know it's supposed to be because she's like a little kid and kids have runny noses and are sloppy. But she's otherwise so adorable that I'm always like, this just ruins it. Why did you have to do this? And here I'm like, no, this is appropriate. This is correct. And I also have to mention, give huge props to the voice actor who does his voice, because not only does he get the actual voice like as this really sort of disdainful, nasal, whiny sort of tone, which works perfectly, and also looks like it would definitely come out of the face of the guy that we're looking at. Like, there are times where the size of somebody's mouth and jaw and the bridge of their nose and all of this would combine to make a certain type of voice. That's just the way that, like, that sound works. And yet, because we have the voice actor that we have, the voice that comes out looks nothing like what you would expect, or sounds nothing like. With him, he speaks and I'm like, this is 100% that guy speaking. No question. And in addition to just the voice, this is one of the few characters where the little sounds that he makes when he's not talking but the camera is on him work absolutely flawlessly. So you guys know what I'm talking about. The camera is on a character. We're meant to have like their reaction, but they don't have any actual lines. So they'll just be like, and sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, get on with it. But this dude's, all of those moments for him, he's going, and it's just right on. It's so perfect. That is what I imagine, that this dude whines on some level nonstop. It's just never over. He's just always making a sound of vague disapproval, dissatisfaction, whatever. He is never happy. And the whole, like, the intro of him here, it's so gross. He is riding on this guy's back, and he's also very, he's got the chains in his hand, like the ends of these chains that are attached to two women in kind of like, I'm trying to think of how I want to describe these outfits. It's almost like a belly dancer sort of look. But you know, it's like their midsections are exposed, but it's like lots of filmy veils, and they have veils that go across their faces and whatnot. And, it's really giving like Princess Leia, slave girl, and, what's his face? Especially like, since the overall look of this guy is so slovenly, that actually works pretty well when you make that comparison. So he starts blaming the slave that he's riding on for making him late or just getting out of sync with his sister and his father. And he's extremely upset when he looks up and sees that there are some folks carrying a stretcher with a man who is extremely injured. And the dude who's been injured, I was thinking that this was going to turn out to be the slave that we had seen get shot, because we saw him getting loaded up on a stretcher really quickly. No, it's somebody else that I don't know that we're meant to know who this is. But basically, the prince, when they are like, we're so sorry to not bow, sir, because he's like, what are you doing? How are you still like walking past me? You're supposed to be bowing. He walks up and challenges them on this, and they're like, yeah, time is of the essence. This guy is in really big trouble. We're getting to the hospital. And he says, oh, well, then it's time to be swift. And then he kicks this dude off of the stretcher and says to put him out of his misery. And we get a jump after he does that to the monk grinning from ear to ear strangely and saying, now that is one selfish noble. And he seems like delighted. I cannot tell what his angle is on this. Very, very confused. So the prince says something about how, like, is it more important that you afford me the respect I'm due, or that some commoner stay alive? Get the hell out of here with this. You should know what your priorities are. Meanwhile, his sort of like bodyguard is standing there completely. He's like hype manning him. Everything he says, he's like, absolutely. Anytime he sort of hesitates or there's an opening, this man speaks up on his behalf and is just like, you should show more respect. And there's almost a part of me that's like, is this guy for real? Or is this like, I can't tell. I can't tell how much of a bootlicker he genuinely is, because it feels so over the top. But regardless, he zeroes in on one of the cute nurses that's kneeling by this guy and looks at her and then just says, oh, okay, I'm going to make you my wife. And I kind of enjoy this in terms of the, like, it's a fantasy thing to be like, oh, a beautiful common woman is spotted by a handsome prince and taken for his wife. And it's like, well, what if we did that, but it was just terrible? The prince was not only not handsome, but a monster. And it turns out that the other wives, when he gets tired of them, he just sends them back to live with the commoners, which was really surprising, because I kind of was like, is he just going to sell them as slaves? I would not be surprised. But apparently not. They just get sent back. I mean, good for them, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. So he is in the midst of taking this woman away when a dude comes running up and says, how you can't do this. She's my fiance. And Prince pulls a gun out of nowhere, shoots this man in the chest, and everybody stands around watching and doing nothing. Because, like, for real, what are you gonna do? There's no winning. This is the kind of situation where it's like, unless everybody decided that they were going to jump this guy at the same time, there's no chance. And even if you did all jump the guy at the same time, because his family is in power, all it will take is them mobilizing the rest of their forces and coming down on you. And if they're able to figure out who you are, like, depending on how fast they can get out here, they can completely ruin your life. So if you're going to do something, you're going to have to, like, dart out, do it quick, and then melt into the shadows, never to be seen again. And, the woman is begging for people to help because this guy's a murderer. And he looks at her and is like, oh, you would have these people act out against me. And he is gripping her up, and he says, take her to the harbor for me. And I was sort of wondering, is he still like planning to make her a wife, or is he going to do something else because of the fact that she was defying him the way she was? This is when we get the interruption of Zorro walking down the center of the street. And this is so funny because all of the other baddies are apparently here at the same time, and they're chilling on the sidelines just letting things happen, but they know the customs and they're staying the fuck out of the way. Meanwhile, Zorro just walks straight up to this guy. Everybody else is kneeling. Zorro's just drinking. And he says, what's the matter? Do you need directions or something? And speaks directly to him and is not at all respectful. So the prince pulls his gun again and shoots at Zorro. And Zorro begins to take a swipe at him with his sword, when all of a sudden, Bonnie, the pirate who's a glutton, jumps on him from the side and flattens him to the ground, and then pretends that he is her big brother and that he's definitely dead. It's so tragic. I can't believe that you would try and stand up to one of these celestial dragons, because you know what that means. And as she does this, it's a weird moment, and I'm not sure if I'm like reading this right, guys. As she does this, Zorro says a kid, like as she's flying through the air. And then later on, when they're speaking, he's like, where'd you come from? There was a kid here a second ago. She looks the same, though. Did her size change? And I just didn't really like clock it at the time. Because that was the part that kept tripping me up, was that, like, why would you think she was a kid 1 second? And then a moment later, she's in the same outfit and everything, and be like, oh, this is a grown woman. But, yeah, she's apparently, like, throwing her lot in with Zorro, and it's sort of ironic because I understand what they're attempting to do here, but because of the nature of the scene that just took place, it doesn't really make sense. So, Bonnie is like, I saved your life, you moron. What are you thinking, attacking a celestial dragon like that? You could bring admirals here if you get shit too riled up. I put that fake blood on you to make you look dead, and you've got to start like obeying the rules because you are going to get in so much trouble. And he is like looking at the dude who got shot and saying, is there anything that we can do for this guy? And she says, why would you bother? He's a complete stranger. And I was like, why would he bother? Girl, you just like tackled him in front of a bunch of people and pretended he was your brother. Why would you bother? Like, you know, we're supposed to be getting pirates look out for themselves. They don't help other people. And she literally says something to that effect. But she just kind of put herself on the line on his behalf as well. So it's if anybody else had said, forget him, he's a complete stranger, then it would have worked. But because it's Bonnie who's the one who just stepped forward to help him, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Have somebody else say that. She just did the exact same thing. So anyway, Zorro picks this guy up and walks away. And in the midst of all of this, the other big wigs around here, big baddies, are watching the situation and realizing that he's got a high bounty, but that he isn't even the highest out of the crew. So probably that means that his boss, his captain, is like an even bigger fish. And they're all sort of like impressed, but they haven't quite see everything that he can do. But this whole like, oh, you know what? Okay, I see what you're saying. Seraphim says that was less about saving him and more about not risking him pissing off the celestial dragons to the point that the admirals roll up and make all their lives miserable. Okay, that makes sense. I accept this. So he walks off as everybody is sort of contemplating him. And there's also a discussion with like the magician guy who's the one who can see into fate. And he's talking about how it was not meant for the prince to die. Somebody else talks about the feeling of like total bloodlust that was coming off of Zorro, and just the fact that he is obviously nobody to fuck with. So he's definitely made an impression. Then we go back to the Sunny, and Sanji is answering the snail transponder. And he's thinking it's Nami. He gets very excited. It turns out it's Chopper, who is losing his shit because Camie has been abducted. So the next episode is everybody mobilizing. And what Sanji decides to do is call in the Flying Fish Riders. And I was truly startled to see this guy again this fast. I think I have even said, I was like, I don't know if we'll ever see him again. Even if we were to see him again, I never thought it would be like now. But this dude's entire personality has turned into him talking about how handsome he is, or thinking that other people are talking about how handsome he is when that is not at all what they are talking about. It's honestly a joke that like you would think it would get old. And like, I guess it does a little, but I still did find it really funny. And I think it's purely because the animation of this guy is so over the top that the joke just keeps working because he looks so ridiculous. But yeah, they are more than willing to help Sanji out. They are just kind of backward in the way they handle stuff. And Sanji is really frustrated because Duval has like the slowest ride. So as they're trying to go and meet up with their friends, Duval, despite being the leader, is the one that's like coming in last. And he doesn't see a problem with this. Sanji is just like, obviously you should have the best ride if you're the boss man. And that's not how it worked out. We get a sneak peek of him trying to hit on some women. And he says like, I'm handsome. How do you do? What do you say? Want to take a seaside stroll on my big, strong motobolo? And then he makes this really, really weird face. And I am trying to understand because he like sort of breaks off mid-sentence. Is it supposed to be that the kicking that Sanji gave him, while it did rearrange his bone structure and make him attractive, has resulted in like some loss of motor function? That was the way I was interpreting it, but I wasn't sure if that was like correct. But this isn't the first time that this happens, and I kept being like, what are we doing? Seraphim says he's trying to wink and failing. Oh, I was not getting that at all. That's not the way a face looks when they're trying to wink. What on earth? Okay. Honestly, what it looked like to me was when my facial twitch acts up really bad. That's why I was thinking it was like a loss of motor function. Seraphim said she's a lot smaller when she tackles Zorro. Okay, so she can change size. That's interesting. So they head in, and the plan that they've got going on, because the thing is, these guys had been themselves kidnappers and dudes who participated in the sale of human beings. So they would know potentially who is behind this kidnapping, where they would go in order to sell her, how all of this would work. So they are heading in to meet up with the rest of the gang and then divide into groups and go searching for her in various areas. We very quickly go to Chopper and Brook, who Luffy and crew are like, the rest of them are running away, but Chopper and Brook are the ones chilling and trying to be sort of tranquil while they wait, because Brooke is of the opinion there's nothing to be gained by panicking, so you may as well try and be at peace while you wait. And I was like, that is truly good advice if you can manage it. The problem is that then you give the impression that you don't really care that much, which is exactly what happens when Sanji arrives, or maybe it's Usopp. One of them like yells at them and is essentially going, what the hell is wrong with you dudes? Why wouldn't you be more upset by this? Because like literally Chopper is lounging on a sunbed, like one of those poolside kind of lounge chair things, drinking a drink like he's on vacation. And you know, it's one thing to be tranquil, and it's another thing to be like, I'm having the time of my life, which is kind of the energy that he is giving off in that moment. I mean, you know, so anyway, it's truly funny though, because I was thinking like, I guess people could be mad at you for when they roll up and see that you are this chill, but maybe it's fine. And nope, it's exactly what I thought at first. So then we have everybody like going around trying to find out where Camie could be. And Luffy is like getting real handsy with a particular dude. There's a look that passes between him and this other guy, and he tries to pretend that he does in fact have a mermaid, but it's very clearly that guy just like dressed up to look like a mermaid. And as they're looking, Luffy is getting really disturbed because they're allowed to look into each of the cells and see the person inside. And Luffy's realizing, like, wait a minute, they could just grab literally anybody and just sell them? So these are just random people? And it does seem like word of this would spread, and it would really start to affect the tourism trade. It's surprising that there is any tourism at all. But apparently enough people haven't heard about this, or maybe there's just no alternative if you want to cross over the barrier, and so you kind of have to come through here. And maybe that's like, it just seems like there comes a point where I don't want to risk it anymore, you know? So they're continuing to walk around and explore. There's a woman that we see like all alone, and she is holding her purse quite close to her body and has like the body language of somebody who is being hassled. And these dudes turn and watch Luffy as he walks by, and there's obviously a sort of sense of like, maybe we could do something with this guy. They're sizing him up, in other words. So we jump over. There's a bit here where the starfish is blaming himself for what happened to Camie, and he is talking about how I should have known. And when we jump back over to Robin and Nami, they have a conversation about how mermaids and fish people were seen as no better than regular fish. They were not seen as human, and they were treated really, really badly. And Nami is like, that's surprising considering how strong they are, which I was glad that was brought up, because I also was sort of like, we have met some truly badass fishmen. Bro, we've seen some badass fishmen. And how would this even like have been allowed to go on? But I think it's just a numbers game, you know? And when Luffy finds this out himself, because they start to explain this to him, and Starfish is like, this is totally my fault, and is sobbing. Luffy is like, you don't get to blame yourself. You're my friend now, and we're going to help you, and stop thinking about the past. And one of the flying fish riders swoops up, and Luffy's like, bet. And he grabs the back of the ride and jumps up there. So then we jump over to Camie and her current circumstances. It's very, very bad. We're at the human auctioning house at Archipelago 1, which is kind of perfect because if Zorro wants to get back to his friends and he thinks that they are at 1, then maybe this will work out in his favor. But either way, we have the Peterman dropping off the mermaid and all of these dudes gathering around, very excited over the fact that they have something that is so rare and expensive to offer, and people are predicting that the auction is going to be off the fucking chain. And outside, somebody is greeting the king and the princess. Are they the king? I keep thinking that it's the king and his daughter, and I'm like making sure. Saint Rosewald and Saint Shalria. So not exactly king and princess. It's a whole different like vibe here because they are holy. I remember them talking about that before. I don't think I noticed either the first time that I watched this with the two of them. It's a lot more obvious with the brother than it is with them. I think due to the fact that when we first get a look at the two of them, the camera is pointing up at them from the ground as if you are the person who has fallen down and you're looking up at them. But in this scene from the side, you can see the weird sort of cone head thing that's going on with them, which I had seen in their silhouette when we were talking about the establishment of the world government, but I didn't realize that they still had that look to their heads. And I still don't really know what to make of it because, you know, there's lots of weird looking beings in this universe. So it could just be like all of this family has this weird fucking head. Maybe that's just it. Or maybe it's like a really elaborate hairstyle that it's tradition and they just wear their hair like this always. I don't know. But regardless, they are wondering where the hell her brother is. And the dude is saying, well, he did ride a human, and you've got to know, if you're going to ride anybody, ride a fucking fish, man, because they may be dumb as dirt, but at the very least, they're strong, and they're going to get you here in a reasonable amount of time. So then we see exactly what's going on with Camie. And it's really such a bummer, you guys, because the whole thing with her is that she is like this really valuable commodity, but she's also like an animal to them. So when she gives this guy a dirty look, he is staring back at her like, how dare you look at me, in that tone of face, basically. And he goes to hit her, and one of the guys stops him, but it's because she's going to be at auction and they need her to look good. So he basically says, at least if you're going to hit her, do it somewhere that the mark will be covered up by clothing, which is like a thing that dudes who are experts at beating their wives also do. So that's super, super fun. Okay, Gus says they're ranked above kings, just world nobles. Okay. I really am gonna need to like work on remembering their individual names though, because their names are not sticking with me at all. I just read them, completely have forgotten them already. So it turns out that a lot of the like pirate leaders are here, and they're thinking that they are going to potentially bid on some of the items that come up for auction, items being, you know, people. And this scene with Camie, she finally like yells at him that Hachi is going to come and save her. And he says something like, you don't know when to keep your mouth shut, do you? And personally, I was feeling the same way. I was like, girl, you are in a real bad situation. I understand that you kind of want to spit in his face, but it just feels like you're making things a lot harder for yourself than, and it's not going to accomplish anything, which, you know, this is just part of why I'm a sheep. And corral me, I suppose it's fine. But they decide that what they are going to do is fit her with a collar, and that's going to be how they manage her. And the collar is coming toward her. And all of a sudden, the dude who is holding it, his eyes just go white, and there's an expression on his face as if he's just had a sudden shock. It's almost like he just had a heart attack. Really, what it looks like, if I'm honest, is like somebody just grabbed him by the balls and squeezed. It's a truly startled expression. And he just falls backward, and everybody drops her and leaves her alone because they are concerned with getting a doctor. So the camera pulls out, no explanation as to why this guy just went down, just in time to keep from getting the collar around her neck. And there is a giant in the holding cell next to her who looks down at this, what appears to be normally sized dude, although it is hard to tell because compared to the giant, it might be that this guy's still very large for a person. But he looks down at him and says, "I felt that hockey was you, wasn't it? Who are you, old man?" And the guy pulls out a flask and just says, "Oh, I'm no one." And he chugs some booze out of his flask. And then the camera pulls up and we see his face. He's got the face of somebody who's maybe in his like early 60s, and white hair, shoulder length, a beard that's like groomed in such a way that there are 5 points at which it comes up like under his lip. It's really kind of cool looking. I sort of like it. Little round glasses, and he's wearing like what looks like a robe with a big hood that is white with a pattern on it that I can't place. And it says former vice captain of the Roger Pirates, Silver Rayleigh, the Pirate King's right-hand man. And this dude, by the way, I want to thank Florian because he got in touch and was like, "I don't know if it's going to give you the translation of the title cards that show up underneath his name, so let me know when you get there." And they didn't give the translation on Hulu. They do give the translation on Funimation. So just thank you for getting in touch with me about that, Florian, and just thought I would let folks know for the info. There's nothing particular. But yeah. So when she had said, because this is Shaki's husband, he's 100 times stronger than you. Gus is saying this, and this is exactly what Florian said as well. Maybe she wasn't wrong about it. You know, what Florian said was, "So was she wrong about that 100 times stronger? ? I guess we'll see." And Gus says, "So this is Shaki's husband. Seems like the 100 times stronger than you guys claim is seeming more realistic." Everybody's being very subtle. But yeah, this, like, the hockey is a means of like using magic is the only way I can say it, that we have seen a couple other people talk about before as well. And I can't recall if we got any specifics on it, but it's definitely come up. And despite the fact that, like, you know, we're getting this information that this guy kept Camie from getting collared, we don't get anything specific about what he did to the dude and whether or not it killed him, whether or not it was supposed to kill him, or if it was just meant to stop him. And like, Camie she has been got. So the collar going on her seems like it's an inevitability. He's kind of putting it off, but it's going to happen eventually anyway. But I think really the threat is once you get it on, unless you have a key, you can't get it off without it exploding. So he's trying to give her a bit of a chance to have it not fasten around her neck to begin with, which I do appreciate. That is, you know, a valid goal. But yeah, so this is the intro to this character, Silver's Rayleigh. And I'm really going to be curious, maybe you guys can just tell me and it's not really a spoiler, but like how people are exactly going to refer to him, because the way that first and last names work with Japanese and the way that these like names work in this story, they don't always match up. So I'm thinking that like Rayleigh is his first name, but I don't know if that's being done here and whether or not people like refer to him by that or not. And he says something about how he may have overdone it a bit. So I am assuming that it's not like, oh, I overdid it, like, LOL, maybe I didn't need to go that hard. I can't tell if it's that or if it's just maybe I lost control of my temper, you know? Okay. So Gus says, we've seen it a bit when Shanks met with Whitebeard and the rookies on Whitebeard's ship just started to pass out because of Shanks's hockey. Right. Rayleigh is his given name. Silver's is his surname. Okay. Rayleigh is the more common name used for him. Okay, cool. So yeah, this guy, the fact that he's been like got and is here in chains, I'm going to assume that this is a very I'm only here because I want to be sort of situation, and that he is going to fuck some shit up pretty hard. And I will tell you what, I'm looking forward to that. I hope that he fucks a lot of shit right the fuck up. Bring it on, bud. Let's do this. Nobody that I want to see get fucked up more than slavers. I mean, come on. So, yeah, that is where the episode ends, and we have got a new big player in the mix. Somebody who used to be with the Roger Pirates. I mean, that's pretty intense. And I also think it's interesting that the giant sitting next to him could feel his hockey. And whether or not that's like that guy's skill, if it's because he's a giant, if anybody would have been able to feel it, like, you know, what's going on there. But he's not just like, he didn't just used to be with the Roger Pirates. He was like the vice captain. So that's a pretty big deal. So yeah, I am hoping that he just ruins everybody's day. I am really, really excited to see him unleash. I hope he does. I don't know what that looks like. I genuinely, like, with the fucking celestial dragons, I don't really know what he's allowed to do, you know? But I really want him to do something. And if he's strong enough, can he just do it? Does he have to be sort of secretive about it? Like, is he gonna try and do things from behind the scenes to sort of fuck things up throughout and do sort of kind of like guerrilla warfare? I don't know. I don't know. But all right, I have got to wrap up. So guys, thank you all so much for hanging out and commissioning this. Thank you to Florian for getting in touch and giving me the translation and warning me about that being important. Appreciate all of you in the chat feeding me info and whatnot. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.